Stephen has worked on stages throughout the United States, abroad, on Broadway, off-Broadway, in television and film. He received the 2017 Virtuoso Award from the Santa Barbara International Film Festival for his work in August Wilson's Fences, starring Denzel Washington and Viola Davis. In the 2010 Broadway revival of Fences, Henderson received a Tony nomination for a featured actor. That season, he was also presented with the Richard Seth Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor from Actors Equity Association. He received the OBIE and Lucille Lortel Awards in the Outstanding Lead Actor category for his work as Pops in Stephen Atlay's Gurge's Pulitzer Prize-winning play, Between Riverside and Grey Valley, for which Stephen also received his second Tony nomination. He has been honored with the Lucille Lortel Lifetime Achievement Award, a Drama Desk Harold Prince Award, an AUDELCO Lifetime Achievement Award, and the John Houseman Award from the Acting Company. Henderson's film work include performances in 6 Oscar-nominated films: Denis Villeneuve, Dune, Greta Gerwig, Lady Bird, Steven Spielberg's Lincoln, Denzel Washington's Fences, Kenneth Lonergan's Manchester by the Sea, and Stephen Daldry's Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. Noteworthy television work include the FX Hulu series, Des, Halle Berry's directorial debut, Bruised for Netflix, HBO's The Newsroom, HBO Film's Everyday People, presented at Sundance Film Festival in 2004, and William Duke's PBS American Playhouse film of A Raisin in the Sun, starring Danny Glover and Esther Roll. Henderson's 6 Broadway shows include 2 Tony winners for Best Revival of a Play, Raisin in the Sun, 2014, and Fences, 2010. He was Torvald in the heralded replacement cast of A Doll's House, Part 2, led by Julie White in 2017. Off-Broadway, his roles include Pontius Pilate in the Labyrinth Theater's company production of The Last Days of Judas Iscariot. Directed by Philip Seymour Hoffman, Henderson has been part of several productions at the Kennedy Center, most notably as a member of the Acting Company for Kenny Leon's Historic Century Readings. Stephen was inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame at Broadway's Gershwin Theater on November 18, 2024. His address today is titled, "The Sands of Time Are Our Stepping Stones."
Dr. Shannon, distinguished members of the College of Fellows of the American Theater and inductees, welcome guests and fellow Wilsonians. I am grateful for yet another opportunity to confront my dread of public speaking. I only accept these invitations from people whom I respect at notable milestones of worthy organizations, and this checks all boxes. To avoid rambling off message into the many anecdotal laden corridors of my mind, I choose to read as best I can what I have to say. Now, and when I lose my place, I'll vamp. The Arena Stage is a landmark regional theater drenched in its own singular, illustrious production history. But I must acknowledge the irony of delivering the Roger L. Stevens keynote address here rather than the National Theater of Performing Arts that will always be his legacy. I met Mr. Stevens briefly but memorably in 1986. The management, staff, and crew of the Eisenhower Theater moved their annual Christmas party a week earlier to celebrate with Hal Scott's cast of A Raisin in the Sun, starring Esther Roll and Danny, the film was with Esther Roll and Danny Glover, but when we did the show at the Eisenhower, it was Esther Roll and the great Delroy Lindo. Mr. Stevens was informed of the calendar shift And he chose this opportunity to congratulate us in a large, I think it was a full page ad in the Post, announcing that we had broken several previous house records during the run. Carol Channing in Jerry's Girls, Elizabeth Taylor in Little Foxes, and Dustin Hoffman in Death Was Salem. Now, I played Bobo, the smallest speaking role, in a great production of Lorraine Hansberry's masterpiece. Very proud to have done that role many times. 8 years later, I was a proud director when we revived the St. Louis Black Repertory's production of Jeff Stetson's play, The Mead. It was for the inaugural Imagination Celebration in the Terrace Theater. Now, the play depicts Martin King and Malcolm X as fathers of daughters who have lost dolls and other toys when their homes were bombed. DEI restrictions could forbid that play in the Terrace today. But I am sure that the financial advisors of the new chair and members tell them that diversity is good for their stock portfolios. And if diversity is good for your stock portfolios, it seems like it would be proper for performing arts as well. Most probably, August Wilson's King Hedley II in 2001 and Kenny Leon's historic stage readings of the American Century Cycle in 2007 will remain my final appearances in the Eisenhower or the Theater Lab. But all these treasured memories of working at Kennedy Center are part of American theater history. The sands of time are our stepping stones. They fill the hourglass of decades as we stride from one achievement to the next. Because of playwrights and the theaters that produce them, footprints in the sands of time are not easily blown away. As Amiri Baraka wrote, today is the history we must learn to desire. Today is the history we must learn to desire. What we do in response to challenges outweighs the challenges. It was true for Sophocles, it was true for Athol Fugard, and it is true for Limnach. I consider myself a revolutionary optimist regarding America and American theater. I have come to understand that in these challenging times ahead of us, optimism is a revolutionary act. We must believe in change, and we must believe that change is possible in order to effect it. We cannot relinquish the hard progress that we have made. Certainly, if there had not been two Americas, a white America and a black America, we would not need black theater. But there was, and we do. We have Caramoo House, and we have Cleveland Playhouse. But we are welcome in each other's houses today, and we are not going back. Someone had that as a campaign. I'd like to share a couple of stories with you. That first preview of King Hedley II at the Eisenhower Theater lasted over 3.5 hours. We got out of costume, makeup, and the backyard dirt of the set, and we had a measured, unflattering note session. It took a little while, too. When we exited the stage door on that cold March night, it was 5 hours since the curtain had rolled. And I was amazed when we went out that side door of the amount of audience that greeted us. They were not seeking autographs so much as giving thanks. There was an older couple who had brought lawn chairs. It was not their first rodeo. When they rose to approach Leslie Uggams or Stokes, I can't remember exactly who it was. I know it wasn't me. The Potomac wind caught their chairs, and I helped them. They thanked me later, and I told them how surprised I was that there was so many people after such a long evening. And they said, well, we always see August Wilson's plays out of town, particularly early previews. We want to hear the language before it's trimmed for Broadway. Now, these are experienced theater lovers of poetic text who knew that this was a special playwright. In 2007, Kenny Leon was artistic director and Narda Alcorn was production stage manager for the readings of the entire 20th century cycle. They were presented in rotating rep at Kennedy Center's Theater Lab with sold-out audiences. The weekday matinees were attended by high school students from everywhere. Some came and left on school buses and some on public transportation. I happened to ride a city bus with a dozen or so students who had seen 3 of the readings. So one student approached me and he asked if we were really reading or if we had memorized the plays and were just pretending to read them. I told him, I said, well, I was more familiar with one of the plays than the others, but we are all really reading. He said, we were all really reading. And he said, and you can do all that and walk around and dance and do this other shit too? And I said, yeah, we do that. And he turned to a couple of other guys who had been sitting with him, and he nodded to them like, yeah, they were really reading. So another fella came over, and he said, I know some girls that can read that good, but not many dudes. That stuff sounds just like real talking, but it's better, you know? I wish I could read like that. I knew that a seed had been planted. So I gave him one of my scripts from my backpack. I knew I could get another, but he needed this one right now for his bus ride home and beyond. August wrote a century of plays to combat centuries of inequity. The impact of his genius will last as long as theater exists. Joe Turner's Come and Gone is to King Hedley as Hamlet is to the Scottish play. You know the unmentionable. And we can celebrate the Bard of Avon on April 23rd and the Bard of Pittsburgh on April 27th. Happy birthday, brother. The revolutionary optimist in me tells me not to give up on any student and not to give up on America. There are enough truth-loving citizens to keep democracy alive, no matter how high in office the liars rise. I'd like to, one more little anecdote. My grandmother, Mama Sally, she was always supportive of me when I did talent shows when I was a kid, maybe in some plays and so forth. But she never came to the theater. She was just supportive. And my son was born on her birthday. She had 2 grandchildren born, 2 great-grandchildren born on her birthday. And she wanted to come to Buffalo. So I brought her, and we were doing a production of Joe Turner's Come and Gone at Studio Arena. And it was the first play that my grandmother was going to come and see. And she always used to tell me when I was going to Juilliard and everything, I'd tell her, you'd say, yeah, I'm playing King Lear in school. And she said, oh, that's nice, babe. She said, seemed like you like that. But I could tell that she didn't feel comfortable going into an American theater. She didn't know all the titles, and she just wasn't coming. But she decided that she would go and see Joe Turner's Come and Go. Sounded like something that she would see. And she went with her great grandson. Jamal was about 10 or 11, maybe 9. And we did the show, and there was a little dinner in the lobby. And she said to me, "Baby, do you know these people very well?" And I said, "Yeah, I know the gentleman, the British guy that came over and spoke to you. He's the artistic director, David Frank. And I know him. I've been knowing him, worked for him in St. Louis, and I worked for him here in Buffalo." And she said, "Do you think that I could go up on that stage?" And I said, "Yeah." And the set was Charles McClanahan's. And I mean, it was laid. And the costumes were Judy Deering. And the lights were Shirley Prendergast. All right, got the church sitting. And my grandmother went up on that set. And she walked over to the pump where water come out. This play is, set in 1911. And she pumped, when that water came out of that pump, it was like the great scene in Miracle Worker. And she just smiled, and she looked at me, she said, "This is my grandmother's house." Now, for my grandmother's great moment on the American stage, I am forever indebted to August Wilson. And the notion that she was there with my son, the whole idea of tradition, legacy, theater itself, to pass on these stories from generation to generation, which is why I must tell you, it is an honor and a privilege to be asked to come here. As much as I fear public speaking, and I knew I could not, unless I got a playwright, you know what I'm saying. But I'm glad that I came here. Yesterday was magical, and we were first blessed with song from one of the great deities of Broadway and American theater. That anointing, I knew, I said, I'll be able to do it. So I just wanted to reiterate that last thing, though, was that there are enough truth-loving citizens to keep democracy alive, no matter how high in office the liars rise.